Now, in motivational interviewing, there are four processes. There's engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning. And these four processes are somewhat sequential in nature, and that you have to engage your client before you can focus on a particular topic or behavior to change. You need to focus on that topic before you can evoke motivation. Then you have to have motivation before you can do any planning. So let's look at each one of these in a little bit more detail. Engaging is defined as the process of establishing a trusting and mutually respectful relationship. Now, this isn't unique or exclusive to the practice of motivational interviewing, but it just makes sense that you need some connection with your client before you can even begin to talk about the client changing their behavior. So other words that you may be more familiar with are attuning to your client, aligning with your client, joining with your client, establishing a therapeutic relationship, connecting with your client. All of these kinds of things refer to the same process in motivational interviewing. It's the process of engaging. Now, in motivational interviewing, it's just as important to know what not to do, what to avoid, as it is to know what to do. And nowhere is this more important than in the first process of motivational interviewing, the process of engaging. One of the things that you want to avoid then is the assessment trap, or assessing your client. Asking a whole bunch of questions right off the bat is off-putting. Your client is not really going to be engaged with you if that's all that you're doing is just asking a bunch of questions, and all they have to do is just sit there and answer question after question. That's not engaging to your client. So you want to avoid assessing your client right off the bat. Another thing that you want to avoid is telling your client how to fix their problem. So if you make a quick diagnosis, if the counselor makes a quick diagnosis and then offers a solution, this also is not going to be engaging. So you want to avoid telling your client how to fix their problem. A power differential is something else that may turn your client off in terms of the establishing a useful relationship. If you come across as some authority figure, for example, sometimes people don't really like that, and that may interfere with the engaging process. Labeling is something else that also may interfere, especially if you insist that the client accept the label before they can be helped in any way. So all of those are ways that that you can interfere with the engaging process and things that you want to avoid. So what is engaging? Well, anything that helps the client feel welcome, comfortable, understood. If you exceed your client's expectations, if your client feels that she and you have mutual goals, or if the client leaves feeling hopeful, then you've engaged your client in the process. Now, there's a number of different ways that you can do these kinds of things. For example, helping them feel welcome, just shaking their hand, using their name, pronouncing it correctly, these kinds of things. But one of the most important things is for a client to feel understood. The second process in motivational interviewing is focusing. Focusing is defined as an ongoing process of seeking and maintaining direction. Now, focusing involves setting an agenda or agreeing on an agenda. We set this agenda while considering the client's goals and priorities, as well as the counselor's goals and priorities, as well as the agency's goals and priorities, for example. And the whole purpose is an effort to create a clear direction for ultimately developing a change plan. So how the counselor accomplishes this is, again, with the use of the 4 basic OAR skills and the skillful use of listening carefully to your client. The third process in motivational interviewing is evoking. And evoking is defined as eliciting a client's own motivation for change. What you're evoking here really is change talk. So what is change talk? Well, change talk is defined as client speech that favors movement in the direction of change. Any kind of conversation that your client is giving you, any kind of statements about I want to change, I wish I could, the reasons are I will, I can, it would solve these problems, and so forth, that's all change talk. Well, in motivational interviewing, we pay a great deal of attention to change talk. When we get it, we reinforce it, we encourage it, we try to get more change talk, because we know that the more a client engages in change talk, the more that they argue for change themselves, the more likely it is that they're going to change their behavior. So if we're not getting much change talk, then we want to do some things to encourage that, one of which is that you can just ask questions that would generate change talk. So here's some examples of a few questions that you could use to generate some change talk. Why do you want to make a change? What are the reasons, from your point of view, to make a change? What would some of the benefits be as far as you're concerned? How might you go about making the change if you wanted to be successful? How might you go about doing it? And what would be your first step, or what would be your next step, or what options do you see yourself having? So all of these would generate some change talk. The fourth and final process of motivational interviewing is the planning process. And planning is defined as developing a specific change plan that the client agrees to and is willing to implement. In using the 4 basic skills, the OARS skills, the skillful motivational interviewing counselor has already engaged the client, focused on a particular topic, elicited some change talk, and within that change talk there are not only reasons that the client sees for making the change and benefits that would accrue if they were to make the change, but also ways that the client could make the change and be successful at that. And these are important to pay attention to during those phases or those processes of motivational interviewing, so that when it comes to the planning phase, then it's just a process of going from a general concept to developing a specific plan. And the plan needs to be a SMART plan. It needs to be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timed. And once you get a plan that is SMART, then that would be the end of motivational interviewing. So that's a brief introduction to motivational interviewing in a nutshell, so to speak. So I hope it's been useful to you and helpful. If you'd like further information, you're welcome to visit my website, www.motivationalinterviewingonline.com.